Why is it just this one culture that has, really intense, crazy, complicated foodways? That idea is so ridiculous to me. There are some really complicated, time-consuming dishes, but then there's also a lot of everyday food, a lot of really easy, fast, quick things that people don't realize. That is so wild and insane to me.
This is Taste. I'm your host, Matt Rodbard. Khushbu Shah is a journalist and the author of an absolutely terrific new book, Amrican, 125 Recipes from the Indian American Diaspora. In this impressive debut, Khushbu covers Indian American home cooking through a very personal lens, offering recipes that blend South Asia with suburban Michigan sensibilities. On this episode, we talk about what inspired her to take this journey and about her deft recipe development chops. Man, I love the recipes in this book. It's so great having Khushbu on the show, and I hope you enjoy this conversation. Khushbu Shah, welcome to This Is Taste. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great. It's launch day, so
yeah,
maybe I'm not great. I don't know.
Your book is out in the world, Amrican. I am such a fan of this book. I have to say, I finally looked at it last night for the first time very closely, and 3 hours flew by.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
I love it. I have so much to ask you about it. This interview will be about your book. We could talk about your time at Food and Wine, your writing and taste. That will be for another time.
Okay, sounds good.
We'll have you back. Let's start and talk about Indian immigration to America.
Mm-hmm.
And really, American is the kind of translation for American.
Mm-hmm.
I get this sense from your writing, and this was new to me, that there were 3 waves of immigration to America from India, and that really translates to the food. I'd love just briefly, can you talk about these 3 waves and how they represent how food is being prepared in America?
Yeah. The Indian diaspora in America is younger than the Indian diaspora in, say, the UK or, the Caribbean, etc. It really kind of kicks off in the mid-1960s when the Immigration Act is passed, which kind of opens up the door to people who are pursuing like higher education degrees. So a lot of the H-1B visas start to come through. So people that are often pursuing STEM careers, that's where you get the kind of the trope that all Indians are like doctors or engineers. And it kind of comes from that. And so there's this wave of immigration that opens. People come over to become doctors, engineers, or study to become doctors or engineers, et cetera, but also other scientists and other, careers as well. So that's kind of the first wave. Obviously, there are Indians in America before that, but it's a very small number, and it's not a super robust population. And then, so after that first wave, you kind of get the second wave through chain migration. So it's the family members of these first people that came through. So my parents are actually part of the chain migration because my uncle came in the 70s. My uncle grew up in the desert in India, basically, where it's like winter means that it's 70 degrees. Summers can mean 120 degrees. And imagine going to Cornell.
Wow. Yeah,
like
it's like the winters.
Yeah.
It's not Palm Springs.
It's definitely not Palm Springs. And this is also like pre-internet, pre-email, FaceTime, WhatsApp. Like, I just could not imagine moving to another country at this time and not being able to remain connected to your loved ones like immediately. They would wait. My mom would tell me stories about how they would wait for these 2-minute phone calls home that he could afford at that time. And it would have to be maybe once or twice, a month if he was really lucky. And so, yeah, my parents are part of that. And then there's this third wave of immigrants that kind of happens in the 90s. That's kind of the tech boom, the IT generation. So everyone that ends up working in a lot of the, computer science jobs, the Silicon Valley type booms, that's in the 90s.
And incredible wealth being generated by Indian Americans. And with Sundar Pichai, that's a great example, right?
Oh, yeah. South Asians are so proud of all of our CEOs.
Yeah, CEOs of the biggest companies in the world are from South Asian descent. And really, how does these 3 waves of immigration relate to the food? Does the food being made, and we're talking about restaurant food because we'll get to the home cooking, but I want to know how Indian food is being expressed outwardly as in restaurant form. How does it change over these 50, 60 years?
Well, so a lot of these immigrants tend to be from very certain parts of the country. So you get a lot of Punjabi immigrants from the north, a lot of Gujarati immigrants from kind of what I like to call the Midwest of India, but it's still in the north. And then you get a lot of immigrants from like the South also, but from very specific regions of the South. And so they bring a lot of their culinary heritage with them. The thing is like when you are immigrants that are pursuing STEM degrees, you're not exactly opening restaurants. And, this idea that you would move to America to work in food was look so down upon. It's only kind of our generation now that it's even really starting to be explored. So the restaurants that were opening were out of necessity. This also the motel generation of immigrants, right? Like in the Gujarati immigrants also own a lot of the 7-Eleven franchises, a lot of the liquor stores, a lot of gas stations. Like that's part of this as well, that like the kind of the chain migration wave. And so a lot of the restaurants that are being open at the time are just the ones that, they kind of feed the community, but also they just need to make money. So it's a lot of the kind of curry house British classics,
Yeah.
sort of diluted,
Which is what a
Yeah.
lot of Americans and frankly a lot of our listeners who love food are maybe exposed to in towns is this type of cuisine that fits into that British style, which is quite narrow. And of course, in Amrican, you cover all over the country, and we'll get to some of the regions you cover. But it's interesting, the stat that really struck me, there's 4.8 million Indians living in America, but only about 5,000 restaurants.
Yeah.
Compared to Thai, there's 350,000 Thais living in America, and there's around the same amount of restaurants.
Yeah.
Stunning math there. And does it go back to the idea that many Indians came here to not open restaurants, frankly?
Yeah, it's not something that was like really encouraged. And also the Thai government actually really invested in opening a lot of Thai restaurants, which is very cool and like a really interesting tourism kind of trick in a way. And, the Indian government never quite did that.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I love reading the introduction to your book. And I just love this book. And I hope it comes out many times how much I love it. But let's go to your myth-busting section.
Yeah.
You have 3 great myths, and I'm not going to spoil all 3 because they're all great. But the one that I want you to talk about is the idea of, quote, Indian food is complicated to cook. That is a myth you want to bust because you cite your mother, who's a professional. She's very busy, but also cooking Indian food every day.
Yeah.
Explain this myth. Bust it for us.
Yeah. I mean, this idea that all Indian food it just takes so long and needs like 900 spices and 72 hours to make anything. Like, why do people think that Indians just like don't work, don't have anything else to do? Like, why is it just this one culture that has really intense, crazy, complicated food ways? That idea is so ridiculous to me. Indian food is like any other cuisine in that there are some really complicated, time-consuming dishes. I'm not saying that there aren't. Biryani, for example, certain styles of biryani really do take that long, really do have that many spices. But then there's also a lot of everyday food, a lot of really easy, fast, quick things. And the idea that people don't realize that is so wild and insane to me.
Yeah, you bust that myth repeatedly in the book, because if you look at the book, there's most of the recipes are one page.
Yeah.
You have very few sub recipes, if any, and really it feels like a lot of it's stovetop cooking, and not dissimilar to Korean cuisine. And what my book came forth with is that you can make this food at home.
Yeah.
In fact, it's pretty easy to make at home.
Yeah, and the thing is, my mom would also make like Indian food is also not a lot of like one pot cooking. That's just inherently not what it is.
Yeah.
It's a lot more like small plates or like a bunch of dishes kind of comboed together to make a full proper meal. But my mom is a dentist, runs her own practice, came home and put hot, fresh food on the table every night within 20 to 45 minutes. And yes, she's incredibly skilled. I'm incredibly lucky to have grown up that way. The pressure cooker really is our best friend in so many ways in Indian food. But the fact that she's able to do that means there's a lot of dishes that come together very quickly. So many of my favorite Indian dishes have a handful of spices, maybe like 3 or 4 spices total. It's a lot of stir-fried vegetables, a lot of pressure-cooked lentils and beans, things that really come together so quickly. And it's, this idea that it would take more than that is ridiculous.
Well, I mean, once you have a foundation of spice, and we'll get into tadka or chonk as it's called, this idea of blooming spice, I feel like that's something that once you understand how spice works and you've got your spice box, the food comes together pretty quickly. Explain this idea of tadka.
Yeah, so tadka, vagar, there's a million names for it. Every sort of region of India still utilizes this technique, no matter how different the regional dishes are. It's the idea of like blooming or tempering spices in some sort of fat, whether that's ghee, a neutral oil of some sort. But what it does is it really activates whatever spice you're using. So, mustard seeds, sesame seeds, urad dal, curry leaves, whole dried peppers. It really brings out all of the aromas, and it's something that you can use to either start a dish or finish a dish, which is kind of amazing.
I think once you have that box next to your stove and you leave it out on the
Masala
counter,
dabba, yeah.
yeah, dabba, having a dabba there. And I had the guys from Burlap and Barrel in recently, and they told me, like, just leave your spices out.
Yes.
Once you leave them out, you can see them.
Yes.
And you can start cooking with them and having a dabba around. With like, hey, man, you can like throw this stuff together. And you do such a great job in outlining many of the spices, or not many, a few of the spices that you need. And I love that you make some real choices and like call it buy these 3 ingredients. I love that you aren't doing the typical spices. To me, one that comes to mind is kasuri methi, dried fenugreek.
Yeah.
Why is this spice so fundamental to your cooking?
I love kasuri methi. I think it's that herb. It's like it's dried fenugreek, but it's the thing that gives certain dishes that certain like je ne sais quoi, kind of that flavor that you can't quite identify, but when it's in there, it makes the dish just so good.
Yeah.
It kind of has this like mild herbaceous earthiness to it, and on its own doesn't really taste that amazing, quite frankly, personally. But when you add it into like, a paneer tikka masala or like whatever it is, an egg curry, I add it into, I have like a tikka masala, like mac and cheese in my book, and I throw some kasuri methi into the bechamel, and it really just adds this like roundness to the dish. It's optional in all of my recipes, but highly encouraged.
Well, it gives it a distinct Indian flavor profile where you won't confuse it with other cuisines, right? It'll give you that kind of je ne sais quoi. I love that.
Yeah.
It gives you like a level of umami, gives you some like those glutamates are popping.
Just what makes it special, yeah.
And I want to talk about Kashmiri chili because that's really important as well. And you write how it's almost in every recipe.
Yeah.
And I think you wisely point that out because you're not like, it's not just for heat, it's for other elements too.
Yeah, it's heat with flavor, right? I hate when heat is just pure heat. I think there's use cases for it, but I like that Kashmiri chili pepper adds like a really wonderful like floral aroma to things too. Like, yes, you could substitute cayenne and paprika sort of mixed together to approximate it, but it's still not quite the same. If you like to cook Indian food at all, or if you just like a little bit of heat in anything that you like to make, Kashmiri red chili pepper is like totally worth investing in. It's so easy to find these days too, thanks to brands like Diaspora, Burlap and Barrel. But honestly, any Indian store, Amazon, like you can get it online in truly 24 hours. It'll show up at your doorstep.
I have to shout out Spice Walla as well.
Spice Walla. Oh yeah, see, there's
Irani.
so many great brands. Yeah.
So many great spice brands. You can get them online, really easy to find.
Yeah.
So buy fenugreek, buy Kashmiri chili, and a few other spices. You have your dabba at home, and you're ready to roll. Okay, let's get into some specific recipes. I'm super into the Maggi omelet. I feel the Maggi omelet is something that you're giving the real cosign to cook an omelet with noodles.
Yeah.
But there's a fun story.
Yeah.
It involves David Chang. I love it. Let's get into that.
Yeah. I mean, maybe this book is low key like Indian stoner food and auntie hacks is maybe what it should have really been.
Sub-headline.
Yeah,
the
sub-headline what it should have been. So I used to work at Eater and, to blog the blog. And I just remember at one point when Dave Chang and Lucky Peach, R.I.P., was like, still around, he made this thing called the romlet where he took, ramen seasoning packet and then added it into some eggs, whisked it up and made like a French style omelet. And I was like, oh, that's kind of fun. And it's just this thing, the name romlet like stuck in my head. And I am obsessed with Maggi noodles, which is basically Indian instant ramen. It is the best. I think perhaps the most superior instant ramen in the global instant ramen canon. But I really love Maggi. And so I was like, man, he really missed out on the best part, though, which is the noodles. Like, I love like a frittata de spaghetti. The idea of like binding just some noodles with like a tiny bit of egg and some like seasoning that really appeals to me. And so I was like, I need to take the romlet to where he really should have done it, which is to add the noodles into the mixture. So and then I add some feta cheese because I love feta. I think it cuts through everything. Yeah. And I have scallions and red onions in there because I don't know, Indians use a lot of onion in their cooking, especially red onion, because it cuts through a lot of stuff in a really nice way. But I also just love the mellow flavor of scallions. I like or spring onions. I like the color that it adds to it too. And yeah, it's my kind of, as the kiddos say, Delulu is the Salulu. This is my slightly delusional Maggie ramen
No.
omelet situation. It's my,
It's such a sneaky, brilliant book with the recipe development, Khushbu.
Thank
You
you.
really understand recipe development. And I got to ask, like, broadly zooming out,
Hmm.
these recipes, do they come from your family? Do they come from your editorial work? We haven't even mentioned you were an
Yeah.
editor at Food and Wine for many years and at Eater. So you, like me, have met so many chefs and
Hmm.
absorbed so much knowledge. But, like, sneaky good recipes in this book.
Thank you. It's a mix of stuff. So some recipes are from my family, obviously, but I wanted this book to focus on the diaspora at large. I am part of that diaspora. There is a personal thread through it. I'm also your narrator, for this diaspora. Everything goes through me, but it is not just my family's recipes. There's recipes from my neighbors. There's recipes from, friends, parents that are from other parts of the diaspora. There's stuff that I just observed. I spent 4 years as a restaurant editor at Food and Wine, so I did loops around the country. And so there's things I would see on restaurant menus or, see pop up, and I'd be like, oh, okay, let me make a riff on that. And then there's just some stuff. There's some stuff that I just wanted to see that didn't exist, and I was like, why doesn't this exist? Like the sag paneer lasagna is a perfect example of that.
Okay, we're going to get into the KFC train. So we, of course, have talked about Korean fried chicken, KFC, but there is a
Mhm.
even better fried chicken. I mean this fully. I'm sorry, Korean fried chicken, but Carolyn fried chicken. Since I had it at Cardamom Hill, I think about a decade ago via Asha Gomez, I've
Mhm.
not stopped trying to chase down the best way to fried chicken. You give it a tribute. You mentioned Asha Gomez's name.
Oh,
Let's
yeah.
talk about this recipe. I love it. I love it. I love it.
I have this theory that Americans would know way more about Indian food if we did way more Indian fried chicken shops. But because Indian food has a lot of actually fried chicken, all kinds. But my favorite happens to be Carolyn fried chicken because it's actually not that spicy, which I
No.
think surprises a lot of people. And it's really heavy on the curry leaves. And I think there's something so delicious about it. But Asha does this genius thing in the batter where she uses buttermilk.
Yeah.
And I love that. It gives the chicken such a wonderful texture. It gives the crust a wonderful texture too. It is such a play of what this book is really about, Amrikin, which is adapting Indian recipes with American ingredients, and using buttermilk in the chicken brine is a very Southern thing to do, right? And it's very cool. And she's a legend, but no one had turned it into a sandwich. And I was like, come on, fried chicken sandwiches, that is the way to go.
Oh, I mean, what's the bread choice? What's the condiment? How you serving it?
I love a potato bun, if possible, a griddled potato
Yeah.
bun. The condiment is in there. It's a curry leaf, aioli mayonnaise situation.
Yeah.
I love a bread and butter pickle on it always. You need a little acidity, to just bring it all together. And then, yeah, good piece of fried chicken.
I feel your recipe is more curry leaf, less garlic. Asha
Yeah.
goes 30 cloves or something. You're only doing 5 or 6.
Yeah, I love curry leaf. I
Yeah.
think, I just wanted that to really shine. I mean, garlic is super delicious, but you can get that in so many other places. But I mean, if you want to add more garlic to it, also
Of
go
course,
for it.
no-
yeah.
no shade.
I'm never going to tell you to not do that. Yeah.
Agree. And I have to call out Rowdy Rooster here in New York.
Mhm.
That's some Indian fried chicken right there.
Yeah,
I
and
love
that's
that
some
place.
spicy Indian fried
Ugh.
chicken. Yeah.
It's definitely spicy, but yeah,
It's great. Yeah.
what's another great gateway? Do you feel like, in terms of, you make a great point,
Yeah.
maybe Indian food could be marketed better through more fried chicken shacks,
Mhm.
because truly a fried chicken shack using Carolyn spices would
Yeah.
kill in most markets.
And people love fried chicken, right? It's a nice entryway in. I mean, I feel like kati rolls have been trying to do a
Yeah.
version of that, right? Because it's sort of similar to a wrap or a burrito, a facsimile of these foods that you understand in concept. And I feel like the burrito is also a great vehicle for other cultures to kind of enter in. The burrito, the taco, right? What Roy Choi has been doing, for ages, I think did wonders for American, understanding of Korean food.
Yeah.
To start having bulgogi burritos, it was kind of brilliant. And so, and there's been Indian restaurants that have tried to be the Chipotle of Indian food, but I think that's still not quite the thing that's going to really get people super familiar with it if you don't understand the ingredients inside. But kati roll is a good one. And then, I don't know, I really love chili cheese toast,
Yeah.
which is a recipe in my book. And I wish there was just more fast casual Indian restaurants that would focus on some of kind of these more simple, snackier foods, less emphasis on saucy, quote unquote, curry type things with rice and bread, and these more kind of things that you drink with chai, or eat with chai, or it can be like a really simple meal. I make chili cheese toast all the time.
I love that recipe.
Yeah.
It is photographed beautifully, and
Oh,
it
thanks.
looks like it's like, why did the avocado toast get so much press and the chili cheese toast not? You pose that question, and I'm also debating, why are we spending so much time thinking about avocado toast?
Yeah, I'm on a mission. I'm trying to make chili cheese toast like the new toast du jour.
I think, cook the recipe from the cookbook. One thing, an observation you make, and I think it's so smart, you're kind of liberating the dosa from the crepe. I feel like there's so much written about how dosas are crepes and crepes are dosas. But no, you're like, it's actually sourdough.
Yes.
Think of it more about flavor profile. Think of it like the actual texture and thickness is not necessarily uniform like a crepe. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just a batter that comes. First of all, there's so many types of dosa. But like the most basic, plain, essential dosa is a fermented rice and lentil batter, and like the fermentation is what makes it so brilliant. It's what gives it all of its flavor, all of its texture, and without the fermentation, there's no point of eating a dosa. A crepe is not fermented, and a crepe is a crepe, and that's great. It's just really boring to keep. I understand that, trying to explain one culture through another culture's food is how we often have to do it, but it gets really boring and annoying when they really aren't actually, equivalent.
No.
And I actually I was like, I need to start calling this Indian sourdough more after actually Artisan Brian, like he started saying that, talking about how actually so many cultures have their own sourdoughs, not in the form of like a loaf of bread. And I was like, oh, that's actually brilliant.
Yeah, because you also it connotes this idea that these are flavorful, like bread dishes. They're not just like there is a landing strip for sauce.
Yeah. Also, I'm a dough idiot, low key, and I love that like you can have a sourdough that doesn't totally require all the folding and shaping and every 2 hours like punching down the dough and like all that. Dosa is can be a little tricky if you don't understand how to ferment the batter properly, but otherwise it's not that hard.
Speaking of dough, Khushbu, I love the pizza chapter. I love it so much. It's so personal. It's colorful. Really smart. Great recipe development. The cheesy masala pizza is like my first one. I love that there's corn in there. But for many, Indian food being expressed as a pizza is kind of uncommon, maybe even unknown. But you bring this mention of this restaurant in San Francisco that started it in the 90s, maybe in the 80s. But let's talk about the way Indian cuisine can be expressed via pizza.
Yeah, I mean, actually, Indian pizza might be the best gateway, quite frankly, to a lot of like Indian flavors. Indian pizza is something that's born in this diaspora, invented in the Indian American diaspora, and has now kind of made it back to India, which is fascinating, hilarious. And actually, if you go to the Bay Area now, there are so many incredible Indian pizza restaurants. So it's not like a certain style of crust, but it's more about like the toppings, and it's this idea of utilizing Indian sauces, Indian spices. Taking Indian dishes basically and transforming them into like a pizza. And that's exactly what the cheesy masala corn pizza is like, based off of this street food dish that I love, that is corn, with Kashmiri red chili and a lot of lime and cheese. And it's like one of my favorite street foods of all time. And I was like, this would be a brilliant pizza. And so, yeah, I did it that way. This pizza chapter is basically what I wish Indian pizza really look like in this country. I think there's a lot of inconsistencies, and I'm waiting for like the really, really brilliant Indian chain to open that like is actually obsessed with crust as well.
Yeah, like the dough and the baking, the flavor development in the crust is actually considered more than some of the other elements. Yeah, I feel Pizza Palace in LA is on their way.
Yes.
In terms of Indian pizza and making it more of a mainstream.
They're so successful. It's really fun to see just how popular that restaurant is.
Yeah, that restaurant became popular, but let's scale it out. Like, what's the deal? What's holding it up, though? You're an observer of trend and the economics of restaurants. You're very knowledgeable about this. Why hasn't it really hit?
I don't know. Indian food continues to stump me a little bit, but I do still think that we're finally entering a generation where working in food, working in restaurants, working in what is quote unquote seen as like blue collar jobs is starting to finally be a little more accepted.
Okay, so this is when we break in and talk about Michigan food.
Okay.
Because you and I proudly grew up in Michigan. I grew up in Kalamazoo. You grew up in Lansing.
Yep.
So we have thoughts, but I want to stay with the pizza theme.
Okay.
What's your Mount Rushmore of Michigan pizza right now? This could be, I'm going to leave it open-ended. It could be fast food pizza. It could be one-offs. It could be chains. It could be styled. It's not to be uniform. Mount Rushmore, Khushbu, your top four. What are they?
Okay. Like OG buddies, like the original one in Detroit.
Yeah.
I don't think the chain ones are always as good. I love Supino's.
Oh, yeah.
In Detroit, big fan. Okay, I gotta throw Domino's in there. People
Please.
forget that Michigan is one of the best chain pizza states. All of the best chains come from Michigan.
Well, if you don't listen to the show, you absolutely know this
Yeah.
because I say it all the time.
Yeah.
We are the godfathers of chain
Yes,
pizza,
it's
of
amazing.
fast food pizza.
Yes.
We invented that shit.
Domino's, but Domino's thin crust, veggie thin crust, very specifically. It is like a god tier
Yeah.
chain pizza. And then speaking of chain pizza, Jets.
The fourth is Jets. It falls
Yeah.
in line. The classic Detroit style with Frico, but the more mass-produced one.
Yes, with the good ranch dressing.
Sick.
Yeah.
We don't need to go there. I mean, I'm such a fan. Back to Michigan. What's a Michigan food, Khushbu, that you think needs more shine? I feel like you have
Ooh.
thoughts, and I know that you have considered our state and have written about it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Michigan, the feelings forever. What is the...
like fudge one. We have great fudge.
We do.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think it gets enough national love.
I love that you say that.
Yeah.
I'm going to link to the show notes a story we just wrote on Taste about
about fudge?
Yeah,
Great.
about national fudge, but Mackinac is the center of it.
Yes, Mackinac, man, the smell of fudge and horse poop on the island.
Such
really
a
distinct,
funny way,
distinct mix.
an interesting way to market the fudge.
That and Verner's ginger ale. Like,
Love it.
There's no ginger ale that has that flavor profile. And then I'll throw out one more, which is I think the Yemeni food and the Lebanese food in Dearborn don't always get enough shine.
Yeah.
And in particular, Toom. Like, does not get enough. I call it Detroit's ketchup.
Explain it a little bit. What is it?
So Toom is whipped garlic,
Yeah.
essentially, with a lot of oil, and it's this wonderful, like, bracingly garlicky condiment that you can dip everything in: fries, chicken. It's often served with kebabs, things like that. But yeah, very popular, very common, in Detroit, where there's a very large Middle Eastern population. But
it's what makes garlic fries.
Yeah.
The best ones possible.
the best. Toom is the best.
Toom is dope, yeah. And you can buy it like definitely at restaurants on the side, get in little containers.
I think there's a brand selling Toom at Whole Foods these days. But
Oh, no way.
yeah, Detroit's ketchup. I think someone needs to brand it as that. Yeah,
Yeah.
you
well,
take the idea.
Michigan Food Branding Agency,
Yeah.
you and I,
Yeah.
we're launching that in a couple of years. We're going to do that. One more recipe that really stuck out to me is your cabbage dish. It's nushak.
Cabbage nushak.
Yeah, cabbage nushak. And it really speaks to the book's ethic because it's like a really simple cabbage that you say you make once a week, which I believe maybe a little bit of yogurt on the side, maybe some naan or rice on the side. Explain this dish.
Yeah, cabbage nushak. I mean, it's also in like the parlance like, that I tend to speak, which is a mix of like English and Gujarati and Hindi all kind of mushed together. My parents call it kubi nushak. Kubi means cabbage in Gujarati. But it's essentially just shredded cabbage, stir-fried with Kashmiri red chili powder, turmeric, salt, little oil, done. And it's the easiest thing. And it's so delicious, so comforting. It takes all of 5 minutes. And I love yogurt rice. If anyone knows me at all or you've ever followed me on the internet, you will know that yogurt rice, like yogurt and rice together, a little bit of salt is like my favorite food in the entire world. And so, the three of those things is a complete meal. You got a vegetable, you got a little bit of protein, you got like a carb.
No, it's like basmati rice that's whipped in with like a little.
Oh my God, I actually don't prefer basmati.
Oh.
And it's basmati. I'm going to correct everybody on this. Basmati rice.
Basmati?
Yeah. Basmati. Yeah.
Basmati. Okay.
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
I love the change.
Yeah.
Basmati is going forward.
Yeah.
Basmati. So you're adding.
I love like a long grain rice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like even a medium grain. Doesn't matter. Whatever you like. Just anything that's not like a sushi rice. It's like so sticky.
Yeah.
That like a yogurt. I actually don't mind Greek yogurt. Some people find it way too thick. And then you just add in your, the stir-fried cabbage, mix it all up in one bowl, and
It's one bowl, and
One bowl.
that's great lunch. It
Yeah.
could be breakfast. It could be snacks.
Be dinner.
Dinner.
It's what I eat when I get back from like traveling a lot.
Yeah, you have.
You need like a reset,
Yeah, I love that idea.
Yeah.
So we often overlook the book's final recipe in our cookbook history, and I want to put it down in American. On page 302, there's something that's really fun. It's jaggery, fennel rice, crispy treats. Now, Rice Krispie treats have been rethought and rethunk and all
Yeah.
that, but I've never seen fennel in a Rice Krispie treat. Hell fucking yeah. This is great.
I love the candied fennel seeds. I feel like everyone loves a candied fennel
Yeah.
seed. Especially when they hand them out like in the little dishes when you're walking out of like Indian restaurants.
Yep.
And I was like, what would be really fun to do with this? And I think it was actually the Sister Pie cookbook that had like a candied fennel or a fennel snickerdoodle or something, and that always sort of stuck with me.
Yes.
And I love a Rice Krispie treat, and so And there's this Indian dish that's sort of similar, but it doesn't have the marshmallow kind of like pulley element to it, and it's just jaggery and puffed rice together, and like rolled into balls, and it's one of my favorite things. But I always wished it had the Rice Krispie texture, so that got me, thinking. And I was like, okay, if I'm gonna do jaggery, maybe a little bit of ghee, in this, what else would be really good? And I was like, oh, candied fennel seeds.
It sounds
Yeah.
amazing, and it really it holds up for a week or so if you want.
Oh my god, it's so good. Yeah,
so good. I love this idea.
little flaky sea salt.
Why was
yeah.
the last recipe? What happened?
I don't know. You want to save the best for last.
You always
right?
gotta have
gotta
a last
end on a
recipe.
banger. Yeah, that's a banger.
Yeah, it is a banger.
No.
Last question about the book. Your dad's chai. I love the homage to your father. He seems like a guy I want to hang out with.
Oh, he's a ham. My
he
dad.
seems like a cool guy. I would love to hear him sing.
Oh, he's an incredible singer. He was almost a Bollywood singer, but then became a doctor.
He became a doctor.
Yeah.
What makes his chai special?
My dad can't cook anything except for chai, but he's the most passionate person about chai I've ever met in my entire life. A super big chai aficionado. He's very particular about it. He has perfected how he likes his chai, which is like you got to steep ginger in it for a really long time.
Oh, cool. That's great.
Yes, he loves fresh mint in there, cardamom, milk, sugar. He likes it, less spicy than some other chai mixes or chai preferences are out there. But then you got to really boil it all together so the flavors like really meld. And he calls it Adu ka jadu, which is a dad joke. Adu means ginger. Jadu means magic. So the magic of ginger, because he puts so much ginger in his chai. Yeah, so it's his Adu ka jadu chai. My mom's so annoyed that it's in there.
That's in there. What? She doesn't think it fits.
She thinks it's really funny, or just like ridiculous, because he can't actually cook. So this is the one thing that he makes.
I love it.
Yeah,
You got to respect your parents. Okay. I wanna close before we get to our last section and talk about Aubrey Pick. Aubrey Pick photographed this book, and we lost Aubrey Pick in the last year to cancer. And I would like to hear from you, Khushbu, about working with Aubrey, and what do you take away from working with such a talented and empathetic and kind person? I was able to interact with Aubrey a few times. The work is amazing. This is likely one of her last projects, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So talk about that a little bit.
Man, I always, when I had the book in mind, I was very lucky to shoot with Aubrey for a lot of food and wine projects. And so, we had worked together over the years, and we'd always joke on set that like one day, that she was going to shoot my cookbook. Like this was the ongoing joke. And then I got the deal, and that was like the only photographer I had in mind. I was really lucky. My publisher also really loved her and really wanted, to work with her. I just think Aubrey's sense of taste was just so incredible. It was really elevated. She also did a lot of justice to cultural books and cultural shoots. Nothing really, fell flat. Nothing leaned into too many like tropes. Like Indian food and Indian culture is very colorful. I wanted my book to be colorful and fun and bright and playful. I just didn't want it to have the same old boring tropes. It needed to feel as Indian as it did American. And I feel like Aubrey like really nailed it. She's also like she's like a wonderful prop stylist too. Yeah. And the way she could play with light. I don't know. It was just, I feel really honored that I even had the chance to like watch her really work her magic, and that it's my book, it's something that we did together that kind of will get to live on. Yeah, always. I was one of her last projects. She did shoot Dolly Parton's most recent book as her final cookbook, which is, if there's a way to do it, that's the one in classic Aubrey fashion.
Yeah,
badass.
Well, rest in peace, Aubrey Pick. What a legend in the game, and gone too soon.
Way too soon.
And thanks for that memory. Khushbu, on This Is Taste, we ask guests about their discerning taste. So to close this interview, here's a little rapid fire, fast and furious taste check. Are you ready?
Okay, let's go.
The best fruit.
Mango, duh.
Okay, I knew that. That was obvious. So good. Is there a mango season on the East Coast, or can you get them pretty much all the time?
On the West Coast, you mean?
Well, I guess we're centered
on
the
East
Coast
now. Sorry.
You used to live here. You're the West Coast.
Now I'm in LA brain. I just love the Wong Family Farm mangoes, which happen for like 3 weeks out of the year. Kind of in July, they're like $9 a mango, but worth it.
Worth it. So in July, look for those. Okay, the worst vegetable.
Ooh, cooked beets, like mediocre cooked beets.
Yeah, and you're a restaurant critic for many years, and when you saw
actually sunchokes too. I can't stand them.
The chokes game is tough for me too. But cooked beets, back to that. When you were reviewing restaurants and scouting and writing, figuring out best new chefs, if there's a cooked beet in the menu, did you have a little bit of like, maybe not?
I'd always try it. And if they were able to win me over with it, then they really did something. But yeah, I just really hate it though.
Do you miss reviewing restaurants?
Not really. I miss writing about being able to like uplift all the really cool chefs though, like
For
and
sure.
writing profiles about them, that I did miss. I do miss that part.
All right, the best dessert.
Grocery store like chocolate sheet cake when done correctly. Actually, the best is really elevated grocery store chocolate sheet cake. Like when a pastry chef does their riff on it, that is like the best. Like when Hannah Ziskin,
I was like, Hannah's
quarter
looking
sheets,
at you.
or like Tessa Diadam when they do their versions. Like she's now at the Georgian in LA. When they do their versions, like game over. There's nothing better.
Your favorite American fast food chain?
Taco Bell, duh.
Yeah. So how do you eat at Taco Bell? What's your order?
Ooh, Crunchwrap Supreme, no beans, sub beef, no beef, sub beans. Or I love the cheesy bean and rice burrito. Add extra red sauce, add onions.
Double red. I like that call. Your favorite cookbook of all time?
Oh, that is hard. There's so many truly incredible ones. I will say I love anything Hetty McKinnon writes.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna shout out Hetty McKinnon right here. Like, she is a beast. All of her cookbooks are lovely, but To Asia with Love is truly one of my favorite books.
Yeah, I love that book. And Hetty, when Hetty comes into the studio and talks, it's beautiful times. Good conversations about food with Hetty. Okay, big ones here. Favorite New York City restaurant right now?
Ooh, so hard. Oh man. Via Crota for life, Thai Diner for life, and you know what? I pop back into Bonnie's, and Bonnie's remains just one of the best restaurants to ever exist.
Always hits hard there. Favorite Los Angeles restaurant right now?
Hard.
Your hometown.
Antico Nuovo remains an incredible place. Beautiful pastas, best ice cream, incredible vegetables. I also just really love Surawan Tofu House. It's this old school, tofu stew spot that just really hits. Yeah.
Favorite new cookbook discovery?
I think you pronounce it Sebze. It's the vegetarian Turkish cookbook. The author is based in Turkey, but it's out of the UK, I think. Brilliant. The writing is amazing. Sebze, I have half of that book bookmarked as like.
I love when you go through a book and you have all the books. Yeah. Your book's like that for me.
Oh my gosh! Wow, thank
so
you.
Great. Favorite city outside America to visit for food?
London, hands down. Everyone thinks New York is a really global city, but it's like you haven't been global until you went to London.
Fully agree. I think it's a great point, Khushbu. I think when you go to London, you see culture on culture on culture, not just like a couple neighborhoods like New York. I mean, LA is interesting too, and New York are similar, but yeah, London is special.
Yeah, London or Mexico City. Yeah.
Ooh, Mexico City.
Great food city.
Great food city. A cuisine you would like to learn more about?
Ooh, I think Afghani food. Afghani food has a lot of overlaps in some ways with Indian food. There's like moments that overlap and some certain ingredients and certain phrases that kind of overlap. But there's a lot that I would really like to learn about it. It looks all super delicious. Oh, I'm also obsessed with this cookbook called Parwana. And I think that has probably really stoked my interest in Afghani cooking.
Do you have another book project in mind?
Oh, yeah. I have 2 books I would love to do.
So what's hint at them? What's the genre?
One is not a cookbook.
Yeah.
One, I think, everyone really thinks that when you have the restaurant editor job and you're running around, it's like the world's coolest job. And on one hand, it is. But on the other hand, there's a very dark side to it that I think is worth exploring.
Yeah.
In some pages, I have some crazy stories. And I think there's a cookbook part 2 to Amrikin. Yeah, that there's a lot that there's 125 recipes, which feels like a lot of recipes, but it's still not enough.
You could go another 125.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah. Especially, I feel like this book kind of leads up to today, but doesn't do a deep dive in kind of the last 10 years. And 10 years to like now. And I think there is kind of like a part 2 that sort of talks about now, to the
modern
future.
history. Like, you've got like Unapologetic Foods doing incredible work. You've got like this modern food culture is really embracing South Asian flavors.
And there's way more diversity in the diaspora now too. And I want to cover that.
Interesting. What's there a region of India that maybe isn't getting as much coverage that maybe should get more coverage?
Oh, Kashmiri food, 100%. Like such a beautiful food way. And honestly, anything out of like kind of the northeast part of India that like borders like China, things like that. There's a lot of really cool like Assam, things like that. Like Assamese food is like beautiful and wonderful. And also a lot of the tribal Indian foodways, like gorgeous, wonderful things, but it's just not that covered. Yeah.
Do you travel to India yourself often?
I haven't been. I was supposed to go in 2020. I haven't been in a few years. I'm hopefully going at the end of this year or early next year.
Oh, that would be cool to read about your discoveries and journeys. I would love to read that. I love your writing. Last one, your favorite sandwich?
Ooh, do you know what? I really love those like California hippie veggie sandwiches,
Yeah.
with like the cheddar cheese and like the sprouts and on like a, good piece of bread, or good like sourdough type thing. Wax Paper in LA makes a really good version
Wax
of
paper
it.
is dope. I love that
Yeah,
place.
and like
Yep.
all of their sandwiches are named after NPR hosts, which I really love. So this one is the Ira Glass.
Oh,
Yeah,
is there a Kai Rizdal?
there is a Kairos
He's my
doll.
favorite. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
he's my
yeah.
favorite LA-based guy.
Yeah, Kairos, he has a sandwich. I forget exactly which one it is, but the Ira Glass is basically their hippie.
The hippie one.
Yeah,
Oh,
and it's my
Ira.
favorite. Yeah,
This has been so much fun. Will you come back, please?
absolutely. Thank you for having
We
me.
got to have you on again to talk restaurants because we didn't even get into
Yes.
that.
Lots
You've
of
got
thoughts.
got hot takes. I'll walk you to the lobby and we'll probably have like 30 hot takes. I love catching up with you, friend. Khushbu Shah, thank you so much for joining This Is Taste.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hey, Eliza, what's up?
I just went to get my morning coffee through like the throngs of tourists that are currently in New York for the summer. So, pretty good, I guess.
Listener, we're recording this at 10 a.m. on a Monday. Yeah, this is like earlier than we usually do it.
Yeah, I'm like not really a morning person, and I normally make my coffee at home, but I didn't have time this morning, so I went to where did I go?
Irving? Is that an Irving?
No, I went to Le Pain Quotidien.
Oh,
right by the
LPQ.
office. Yeah, and there were just all of these families coming in and then looking for a menu and then standing right by the door. It was very much people like not observing the flow of traffic.
We love tourists in New York. We love you guys. Thank you for supporting our city. Thank you for bringing your money from all over the world. But yeah, keep your heads up. Pay attention to the traffic, right? Is what we're trying to say?
Yeah, I mean, I did see some really cute kids, so it wasn't a loss. I think it's just in the specific moment in time in which I'm trying to make it to the podcast studio and caffeinate that like I'm kind of on a one track and I can't have anything in my way. You know?
Well, I love that you're about 1/10 through this iced coffee. So by the time we're done recording this,
It's gonna be so much
it's
better.
going to be a different Eliza.
Yeah, I'm like, excuse me, guys, I have a very important podcast to record. So terrible. It's like the New York stereotype.
It's so good.
Should we talk about three things?
Let's do our three things. I think that's why we're here.
Okay. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll do it. My first thing, I returned to Augie's Counter. Finally, I'd been there in the early spring, and I finally made a second visit because Jeremy Solomon is appearing on the show. He's going to be coming to the studio and talking about his great new cookbook. But I have to report back that it's just like one of my favorite restaurants right now. I love this restaurant so much.
Yeah. Did you get the cheesecake? That's my favorite.
Of course I got the cheesecake. I've also prepped or asked Jeremy all about the cheesecake, and I believe he gives credit to his pastry chef, his original pastry chef, on that cheesecake. So I love this book. It really gives a lot of credit to his staff. I love when writers can, especially restaurant books, allow their staff the space that they deserve for the recipes. But this meal, holy cow! I had a pork chop with strawberry preserves, and that's kind of it. I think it was a red wattle heritage pig, and I gotta tell you, I never really have thought about strawberries and pork like in my life.
Yeah. I feel like apples and pork is kind of
Yes.
the classic combination.
It's definitely true, but for some reason, this was like the best pork chop I've ever had in my life. It was cooked perfectly rare, which I love when pork is like a little bit less than medium. That's my preferred cooking temperature. Some people may disagree, but wow, what a great preserve. Strawberries, so good. And also, I have to say, this guy knows how to cook schmaltz. It's like not the one thing that I like crave. I think I love chicken drips in the pan, the drippings. But when you do the crisp version, sometimes it can be so oily and like cloying. His is amazing.
Well, I have to go back to Aggie's Counter. I feel like that's a restaurant that I've only been to a couple times, but it's always so beloved.
Yeah.
So this is re-upping it for me.
It's terrific. And the cheesecake really with blueberries. Wow. What's your first one?
My first one is that I went to the Jelena pop-up at WSA last week.
Yes.
Jelena, as some people might know, is a really famous established farm-to-table restaurant in LA. They opened their long-awaited New York version last fall. It burned down like 2 weeks later. Kind of crazy.
Crazy that happened. I mean, what a bummer for this iconic, restaurant from LA.
Yeah, it really was a long-awaited debut. I feel like there were a couple years in a row where I would see it mentioned in the fall restaurant roundup, and it wasn't quite ready. And then this happened, but they are getting ready to reopen again, I believe, in a new space. And they're doing this pop-up at the WSA, which is this very chic office building happening downtown. I can't say I've ever had a meal like so clearly in an office building before, but it was fun. I was kind of into it. I feel like there are definitely certain people in New York government who would be happy to hear about office buildings becoming
It's
sexy
wild.
again.
WSA is Kareem's new video series is filmed at WSA.
I feel like I've seen 5 fashion shoots shot there over the
Yeah.
past week. They have that really cool, like, Italian mid-century footbed when you first walk in. I took a lot of photos in. But the food was really great. I celebrated my high school graduation dinner at Justa in LA, so it's a restaurant that's close to my heart, and I feel like their New York version was really special. They did like a almost brothy sweet corn with Fresno chili and shallots that was just really good. I think some of the first corn of the season that I've had. A really good duck confit with cherries. So I feel like a lot of people are on this kind of fruit and meat vibe right now. And they also did a cheesecake with TriStar strawberries, which I thought was really sweet because TriStars are a New York strawberry that are kind of hard to find these days. And I like to see Jelena doing the kind of ultra seasonal farm to table produce approach, but with East Coast produce.
I love this recap, and I hope we can have the Jelena crew on the show. I'd love to hear a conversation maybe the two of you can have.
So that's my first thing.
Okay. My second thing is I have been lucky enough. I have an advanced copy of the new Ina Garten memoir, and I've read it in 2 days. It's amazing. It's revealing. It's funny. I learned a lot about Ina. Ina is somebody who we all know bits and pieces of her bio, but we haven't seen the full picture. I think it's obvious when reading the memoir that this is intentional. She's very, very private in many ways of her life, and she's had a career that has spanned government and food and retail and commerce. And the whole story is a compelling read. And I'm really looking forward to having this out in the world. And I now have a new appreciation for Ina as not just a television personality, as a cookbook author, but as a person. And this is like no BS. We obviously we publish her books here and we're close to the source. But I'm thrilled with the way this turned out. It was way better than I thought.
I'm so happy to hear that. I'm excited to read it. I can't help but wonder who's going to play her in the biopic that will inevitably come after the book.
Been thinking about that the whole time, and really. I have to also say I don't want to. We're gonna have her on the show. Like fingers crossed. We've been talking about this for about 6 months. I hope you and I can catch up with her and get the full story. But honestly, her relationship with Jeffrey is really special, and it's clearly they have a partnership that spans 40, 50 years, and it's really the heart of this story is the way they interact over the years and the way they've supported each other over the years. And it's really sweet.
Mm-hmm.
And I love reading about it.
Well, I can't wait to read it too.
What's your second one?
My second one is that the only thing I want to eat right now is chilled noodles. And yesterday I had some really good chilled noodles. I went to Noodle Craft in Long Island City, and I got their Shanghai chilled noodles with like a knife cut noodle style and shredded chicken and cucumbers. And it really felt like this was the only thing my body could take, and it was delicious and exactly what I wanted. And I think Long Island City is kind of an underrated dining destination
100.
in general. So I just wanted to shout out Noodle Craft.
I love a cold noodle in the summertime. I love naengmyeon, but I also love an unbrothed noodle, just a cold noodle on the plate. Sounds like that's what you're enjoying here.
Yeah, exactly. It was very like chewy and slurpable, and I had boba after, and it just was kind of like perfect.
Oh, amazing. I'm actually thinking about getting that this afternoon.
Okay, I support that decision.
You support it, okay.
Yeah.
How's that coffee, Eliza? How are you looking? You're halfway done?
No, we're at like the third mark, I would say.
Hit that coffee.
I mean, I'm trying to have a chatty and witty banter with you, so my coffee drinking is cut down, but we'll make it through.
Okay, we'll make it through. My third and final pick right now, I'm just going to take a moment and pause and allow you to go to Spotify, type in Sufjan Stevens, Illinois, 2004 album. Go listen to it. It's an incredible album. It sets up what I'm about to talk about, and Eliza and I both have thoughts on this. The most amazing moment on Broadway I've had in 5 years, and I'm fortunate I get to see a bit of Broadway with my wife Tamara, who loves it. Unbelievable to see dance on Broadway first and foremost. I know you saw the show Illinois at the Armory when it was off Broadway, so we saw slightly different versions of the show. But wow, I am blown away by one of my favorite albums from the early 2000s, which is portrayed by Justin Peck, who's the choreographer and Tony Award winner, in a way that it's a musical. It is a dance number. There are no spoken words, and it still tells a story. Very hard to do. I don't want to go over the story because to me it's all about going in and hearing the music and watching the dance and kind of taking away your own thoughts on what it means. But it's definitely about young people and self-discovery and road trips. Those are some of the broad themes. And Eliza, I'm going to have you jump in, but I want to say my favorite number out of many is Jacksonville, which is Rachel Lockhart and Brian Tittle's duo, which brings tap back to Broadway, which you don't see a lot. Bob Fosse used to, in the 70s, like tap was everywhere and Broadway was part of what Broadway was, but now that's not in fashion. But that was an incredible number. I'm going to link to the performance from the Colbert Show where they do this number. It's amazing. But what do you think about the show?
I mean, I loved it. I think that the dance is so emotional and evocative, and it helps, I think, to have a connection to the album, which I listened to that all the time when it came out. I think having the storytelling that Sufjan does and the lyrics helps, like maybe if you're somebody who doesn't typically go to see dance, you can definitely understand what's happening more than a ballet per se. But I think even if there wasn't any lyrics or any kind of overt storytelling at all, these dancers are just so in their bodies and moving so freely and so beautifully with each other. I really loved it. I have a personal connection to a big plot point, so that was really emotional for me as well. But I think that, like, regardless of how you feel about Sufjan or about dance in general, it is one of those kind of performances that you can go into and somehow get a lot more than you would expect.
I hope it gets extended beyond August. I've heard rumors it might be.
I think it might be. I think it's been staged in other cities before.
Yes.
Maybe they would go on tour with it as well.
Yeah, I hope listeners can check it out if it comes to your city or if it gets extended on Broadway. You can check it out here. What's your last one?
My last one is that I recently picked up the final issue of Mold magazine.
Wait, it's closing?
Yeah, I mean, Lin Yi-wan, who's the editor of Mold, from the beginning, I think, or at least from the past couple of years, has said that they would do 6 issues of the magazine. So this is their 6th issue. I imagine they will still produce work online and like Field Meridians, which is one of their events, and other things that they do. But I really admire Lin Yi and Mold so much. It's a really beautiful and unconventional kind of Earth-based food and design publication. And their last issue is called Design for a New Earth. And it's kind of having new imaginations on relationships with ourselves and the soil. They have like artwork. Stephen Satterfield, who does Whetstone and High on the Hog, wrote for it. David Zilber, Alicia Kennedy, lots of folks like that. There's also a 48-page poetry insert that's called Scores for a New Earth. And also like all kinds of special imagery. I've still been working my way through it, but I think that if you're someone that's interested in kind of experimental food writing, food futures, or just kind of picking up something new, I really I'm so proud of Mold for doing this, and I think everyone should be reading it.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I'll link to a way to buy the magazine in the show notes. You should check it out. And Mold is a real legend in the game in indie publishing, and I didn't realize that they were capping it at 6. I think that's a cool idea when you go into a project saying that you have an end date. I think a lot of publications obviously want to go perpetually forever, but that's obviously not possible for creative reasons, for financial reasons, for both.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, like, especially when sustainability is the focus of a project, to think about not just sustainability in terms of editorial topics, but what's sustainable for a publication makes a lot of sense as well. And I do think Mold is so good at continuing to push the kind of work that they do. So I'm sure this isn't the last we'll hear from them. It's just the 6th and final episode in a series.
And this week, we're releasing Cake Scene, the new issue. We can't leave without plugging it.
Yeah, well, just after this in the studio, I'm going to have in Tanya, and we'll talk all about the new issue. So I'm sure there'll be more Cake Scene to discuss.
More Cake Scene on This Is Taste. Liza, thanks for sharing your 3 things.
Yeah, you too.
This Is Taste is hosted by Eliza Abarbanel and me, Matt Rodbard. The show is produced by Shalia Harris and Pat Stango and edited by Clayton Gumbert. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter for updates on all cool things that are happening.